JJK Volume 2 launches later this week, and the rare battles are right around the corner. So in today's video, I'm going to give you 8 different deck lists to get started with, whether you're a new player who's joining Union Arena and wants to jump right in and with a powered up deck, or you're a returning player who just doesn't know where to start and wants to get ready for those rare battles. So without further ado, let's dive in. Now, the question I've been asked about the most before recording this, and the small caveat I have to add that we don't know at this time, is what is going to happen with the bans or restrictions for the North American meta. Right now in Japan, there is a limit too for the starter deck Sukuna, which is very, very strong. And well, it's going to be the best deck in the format if we don't get some kind of ban or limit update. So while I can't provide an updated list at this time, as this information is just not known, it'll probably be released on Friday if, big if, there is a change. But for at least right now, we can assume that Sukuna is going to be tier 1 or 0.5, depending on however you want to look at it, and be kind of insane. Now, based on all the other updates we've gotten so far in Union Arena North America, I can't imagine a world where we don't get some kind of update on Friday, but you never know, and I just want to have this as a keynote up front in case we do get some kind of limit or meta update later on this week. So with that out of the way, let's get into the deck list. So yes, up front, we got to acknowledge that we got a new color, which is red, same that we saw with Bleach Volume 2, that we're always going to get a new color based around some type of arc, and in our case for JJK Volume 2, it's going to be based around the Shibuya incident. So up first, we have Geto, which has a very unique effect with the Cursed Spirits that you can remove them from your sideline to your outside area to gain the activate main abilities. Now, there's a lot that you can ultimately do with this and the various combinations you can pull together, but the long story short is that there is going to be a little bit of self-mill that's happening with the Subway platform to get those cards into your sideline, and then use the various effects based on whatever the condition might provide or call for, right? Based on what your matchup is looking like. Other than that, we do have just your traditional removals or other cards, but the key focus of this deck is really going to be all around Geto himself. But of course, we also do have the Chozo package in this deck as well, which lets you draw a card and get some extra value if you have the 2 other partners with him. But in terms of a color trigger, you know, we have the Mojito as a 2-of, but it's just not a very strong color trigger. Traditionally in red, it is a little bit lacking in that regard, but also it's just not one that has a good spot in the deck. It's not like it's a raid fodder for the Geto, because spoiler, it doesn't have a raid. It's just a base vanilla, as it were, or base SR, and it does lack a little bit in that regards in terms of raid characters that we want to be playing, right? Chozo is the only raid character in this deck, so when it comes to more aggressive lines that we can pull off, while there are ways to restand Geto for the paying of the extra costs, it does take a little bit extra work to get there. You have to have the right cards that you're moving. You do have to get the right energy requirements. So it does take a little bit of setup, but it's a very flavorful deck for what it wants to be doing. Another red deck that we have is all about the friends, as it were, or the Jujutsu sorcerers, as the deck archetype is called, that is based all around, well, Yuji at the heart of it, which I'll explain shortly, but it really is about Gojo, Nobara, and Yuji all coming together in a special way. But the cool thing that this deck ultimately does, and what you're trying to line up, is that with Yuji, you get a chance to make him a double attacker if you want to, and you have the way to power him up with the Black Flash special, which is going to count for a removal and then bump up his BP. So it's just a nice way to get that little extra aggression when you really need it. However, this is another deck that plays very well into the, you want to have all the same characters, the same typing. So you will see many characters that play off themselves and with other cards being on the field to get an additional effect, or just say if you have X amount of Jujutsu sorcerers. So that is going to be kind of a little bit limiting in your deck building principles. And then I gotta give a shout out to Mei Mei here, just because one, it creates the right typing that we care about, and it is a damage 2 that goes up to 5k. This is another deck that wants to be much more aggressive, so having a 5k option, also the Gojo can get there as well, but that can attack through some of these Sword Art Online green cards, or just some of the other 5ks that we traditionally see in green decks, is nice to have that option. Of course, if you have multiple UGs on your front line, you can just double attack and go around them if you absolutely need to. And then this one is really nice for the color trigger, because it is a UG that we care about for raid fodder, but it also is just a very good card that can gain some BP and get some impact if you really need it to. So this is definitely one that offers a little bit more flexibility when you really need it. It's a double energy, which is always just nice for smoothing out some of your plays, but ultimately this one, with having both the UG and the Nobara, giving you a little bit more pushing power is really nice to see. However, one thing that all of red seems to be missing from at least these deck lists that we have is there's not a lot of great defensive raid options, meaning if your opponent attacks you and you get a raid out of life, it's just okay most of the time. Now, playing a raid for free is always good, but if we had other ways than just Nobara, which can hit one card in very limited situations, right? It's nice where compared to Gawain from Code Geass, that can just neg the entire board by 1,000, and that can completely shut off some attack. So this deck is a little bit better, in my opinion, than at least the Geto list, but it is still one that has a little bit of setup that's required for honestly not as much payoff as we'd like to see. Now, going into our blue decks, we have the big Sukuna with a lot of text, which ultimately just says, I get to draw a card, you have to discard a card. Oh, by the way, I might kill something as well. So it is a 5k with impact with a when played ability. But the other thing to note is this is just the extra, extending the Sukuna deck. We have the control Sukuna in here as well. And we have the new Yuji, which is going to be kind of the all-star for a lot of the blue decks going forward. That becomes a color trigger that we care about, and also a double energy provider, not immediately, but very, very easily that it comes online for when you need it to. So we have the normal extra draw package that we'd like to see out of the blue JJK list. But if you're someone who wants to play more of a late game or really late control style of Sukuna deck, you can either play this version or the Shrine version, which have you. But the new Sukuna really does want to be more of one that's attrition focused, grinding down your opponent, and just trying to get the most value out of its on-played effect by having those extra Sukuna fingers in your sideline at the time that you play it. Again, just the first effect where you draw a card and your opponent places one card from their hand in their sideline. When you're getting into the late game and you're in top deck mode, it's going to be really rough to be in a spot where you can line up certain cards from your opponent's perspective. So just having multiple 5k bodies is likely going to be enough to close out the game while you're slowly chipping away their hand turn after turn. So this new Sukuna does take a little bit to get online, but I am a big fan of having a new playstyle in blue like this that gives us more of a control style feel. Now, the one that I'm most excited about, and I'll be completely biased, acknowledge that up front, is the new Nanami deck coming together. And yes, this is more of a pure Nanami build. You still run the Sukuna because, spoiler, it's absolutely insane for getting towards Nanami's condition of needing to go lower in deck size. You need to go down to 15. But what's really important about this one is the new Nanami allows you to just freeze one of your opponent's characters. If they have a problematic damage to impact one character that's coming your way, you say, nope, sorry, that's just not going to do anything for the next turn. And because it freezes it for a turn, chances are they're not going to try to sideline at that turn. They're just going to wait. So it's a great way to make sure that you handle a threat easily without having to lose too much along the way. I also want to give a special shout out to the 2 energy Nanami as well. The color trigger, again, being a color trigger that we're very happy to run for a lot of reasons, but it goes up to a 4K. So this is also what I would consider more of a control style of deck because it wants to stall out until it gets to the 15 cards left in deck and then just goes into overdrive with all the powered up effects that Nanami is going to get. Now, yes, we are still running the raid Yuji as well because just the bounce removal is so good. Maki is just great for the extra filtering. And again, even the 1 energy Nanami that we got is so important for being able to just chip away at that card requirement of having 15 cards left in our deck. So if you played this deck in Volume 1 and just felt like it was nearly impossible to get down to that 15 card limit, good news, it is a night and day difference with the Volume 2 stuff. And at least from a playability standpoint, in my mind, the deck that gained the most, other than, of course, the Sukuna deck that is probably going to be some kind of limit or restricted, it's got to be the Nanami deck. This one definitely had the most love put into it from the overall Nanami package. And if we get to keep Sukuna at 4, I mean, all the better, right? We're able to lock down our opponent's stuff while still being aggressive with all our 4Ks. It's a pretty nice spot to be. And having the early 4K blocker is pretty great. Now, going into yellow, we have Megumi. And this one is another one that I'm so excited that I got a nice glow up. From a color perspective, yellow overall definitely got the most. Power level wise, I wish it would have gotten a little bit more love. But if you want to multi-attack with Shikigamis and just burn out your opponent quickly, first off, Max Elephant is insane. We just got to acknowledge that up front. The fact that it's a 4K attacker still gives you energy in the front line. It just does everything that you need to be able to do in this deck. Because again, the number one issue with this deck most often is the Chimera Shadow Garden does not produce energy. I will still be upset with that for as long as I live. It should have had an energy on it. but that is going to be a key enabler to making sure that you're getting in your extra attacks and making sure that they're getting their rightful power level. And then, of course, with the new Megumi as well, being another BP booster, suddenly a lot of our cards that were either stuck at 2K or 3K can now punch above where they really need to. It's not all that uncommon that you're going to be able to push up a 2K and it suddenly becomes a 4K attacker when you really need it to be. So if you wish that this deck had a little bit more for it in Volume 1 and you just really love the character, then yeah, it does. It's actually playable now, as I will call it. Again, it is lacking a little bit in terms of the searching that we would like to see to have such a combo-focused strategy come online, but it is still a huge upgrade that this deck got compared to where it was in Set 1. And then, of course, man, I love it, but I really wish we got a little bit more love in it. We did get all the binder promos, which is why this deck is even, possible, but we have the Gojo and Geto deck, which I'm so happy to see them together. The alt arts that they have in this set is just so beautiful with one another that it is going to be such a great deck to foil out if you can. So this deck is all about having Gojo and Geto on the same line, battling it together, super flavorful, and we do still have a lot of kind of those key cards from Set 1 that we like to see. Again, the double blocker really doing a lot of work. It's a color trigger that we are probably the best double blocker, in my opinion, in Union Arena so far, because it's also the color trigger that you really care about, and because it is just an important card to have when you're trying to line up the Getos as well. Definitely is a MVP when it comes to that, but this is definitely more of your control style of deck with some filtering elements by being able to find those key pieces. But if you're able to line it up, if you're able to maybe put in the stasis package built into this as well, you, at the end of it, have some very difficult cards to remove while having some heavy hitters that you can challenge your opponent with. So this is definitely a little bit slower of a deck compared to the speed house that we just saw with the Megami overall, but still one that can have some good mid-range feel to it. And I do have to give a special shout out to the Okinawa trip because we do have a way to search for it. And it is also a key deck consistency enabler by being able to find us more Getos and Gojos to have their powered up effects together. And again, by the fact that you can search through so many cards when they're either sideline or searching for some extra cards, this is a oddly consistent deck for yellow if you've played yellow decks in the past. So it's also nice to see that we are getting more consistency pieces, in Volume 2. In this case, Esper Sisters really obviously the gold standard, as it were, for Union Arena yellow, but nice to see that we had it for the Volume 2 decks here as well. And then going to our last color, we have purple. And yes, we are trying to get through all of these very quickly, but we have Mojito, the self-sacrificing combo shenanigans that we saw in Volume 1 just got beefed up even more because we do have the ability with the new Mojito to draw some extra cards, sideline some extra stuff, and just try to combo together a few key attacks or BP manipulation-based effects to get in the points of damage. Now, the one thing I really gotta give a shout out here to is Jogo from Set 1 just still being a 3K popper raid, which is really great. We also have the new Jogo, which allows us to have an active trigger in the deck as well. So very excited to see multiple parts of these coming together, giving us more raid fodder, freeing up our 3-line Jogo just in case we need a 1P minus for something else. And then, of course, another deck that cares about various sidelining of certain cards to get the effect. So this does have a very similar feel to it as the Geto deck that we talked about earlier, because it does require a little bit of setup. It requires a little bit more either self-milling or finding the right pieces to get the most value out of it with the Mojito. But this is definitely one that if you tinker around with it and you spend the time filtering through it and trying to find the right pieces, you will definitely be rewarded for it. And then last but not least is don't call it a Toto deck, call it a Mechamaru deck, is the ultimate Mechamaru mode absolute. This card and this deck is just good value stuff. Now, it is a 6 energy, which is the only possible downside I got to give to it. I really wish it was a lower effect, but the important part about this deck in particular is we have the color trigger Muta, which goes into the Mechamaru to give you the 4K removal, but then also with the Goodwill event, we're able to bring this back and have consistent looping removal while also having impact when you really need it. Now, Toto is very good for energy line disruption. It still remains the GOAT at disabling green decks and making sure that they lose access to some of their double energy setups. So this is a deck that if there's a second deck that I would pick out of all of these to take the gold, as it were, for the rare battles coming up, it's got to be Mechamaru, because you just have so much flexibility in this deck list overall, while still being able to crush through some damage with an early Toto and damage too. Like, disrupting their energy line and threatening damage too in the same exact turn is just silly, and we finally got another good raid card to go with that deck, right? Previously, we had to rely on the Maki with the double attack that just felt awkward to string together, but now we have a good special card. We have a good extra removal raid body. You love to see it. Huge upgrade for Mechamaru fans, and definitely one I think that would be, again, not surprising at all if it wins some rare battles. And then last but not least, we have the updated tier list, and I read all your comments. I get it. Fine. Have the whole thing, right? It looks ugly. It's all, faded, whatever. But here's the full list. I'm so sorry that I tried to make this a little bit cleaner, in the past. Shout out to Typically Red in the Union Arena Discord for giving me the link to put all this together. I changed some of theirs. We definitely have some disagreements. Even in the draw 3, talking about those guys, we don't agree on all the placements overall. But here it is. Here is every deck in Union Arena. And as I mentioned, in my opinion, the two biggest things, and I forgot to move the Toto up, now I'm just realizing, obviously, blue JJK, it's on top, it's king. Will we see a limited 2 for Sukuna? Who knows, but just get ready to see a lot of it at both the regional and the rare battles. I promise you, it's going to be everywhere. And then maybe the sleeper pick, because people just don't realize how good it is yet, is the Toto deck. In a lot of situations, you will just automatically win your green matchup based on Toto's ability if they're not expecting it or they don't play around carefully enough. And then the new Mechamaru that we got, that we can just loop it back for value and not lose any action points because you get to raid it for free. It's good. It's such a good purple deck that it's, again, I wish we didn't have to rely on the color trigger to make it happen to get the full 4K removal. That is the only possible negative you can say. But otherwise, looping that back and always getting impact and having extra removal baked into it is going to feel insanely strong. So anytime we have that level of recursion with a good raid target, we gotta put it up there. Shout out to Mechamaru really taking the MVP slot on that. So there is the overall tier list. You can let me know your thoughts in the comments below where you would put some of them. Again, I think that the top regional has a good days category, or more of the same in my opinion. They're just 2.5, but depending on the day, they could go either way. But for easy picks, again, I think these are just going to absolutely be the top of the top. Pretty easy to play other than the blue bleach deck, but it's just so strong when you line it up. I have to put it up there with the rest of them. Those 5 decks, just in my opinion, really stick out as decks that I'm expecting to see a ton of at Gen Con. So again, let me know your thoughts down below. Are you excited for JJK Volume 2? Let me know which deck you are most excited about. But for me, I'm going to be foiling out my Nanami deck. I'm so excited to finally get it. And later this week, I'll be getting my case. I'll open it on the channel again. And hopefully we can finally get a 3-star, right? It's been 10 cases and I haven't opened a 3-star yet in Union Arena. God, please, I need the help with the 3-star. So with that, my friends, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, more Union Arena content, especially as we get into regional season. Very excited to see what deck lists come out on top. But until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.